What's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Adidas AE1 Low, and on the surface, this should be a really fantastic shoe. I'm not sure that the whole is really equal to the sum of its parts, though. So let me explain why. So I'm going to be referencing the Adidas AE1, the original, throughout this video a lot because there's a lot that really kind of needs comparing versus which one you're going to get. Now, that comparison starts in the uppers. Now, obviously, this is a lower version, right? So it's a little bit, less material in the uppers. No more is that evident than in the tongue. In the original AE1, the tongue on this thing was attached all the way across basically the middle of the forefoot, right? Like right before the ball of your foot. Then it had a little bit of a gusset going into there. At least it held it in place. Whereas the lows, it is just held in at the very tip, and it is a very, very flimsy tongue. Doesn't really do much, and it is not very long either. It's very short too, so it doesn't really aid in any lockdown. And the thing I noticed about these right away was how much my foot was slipping forward in the shoe. Number one, because the lace line did not come up as high, on my distal leg or superior ankle. And number two, because the tongue was kind of moving all over the place. So I was really jamming my toes in these ones, something I did not notice in the original AE1. And really that just comes down to, there's not as much holding you into the shoe. And that really makes a difference in a shoe like the AE1 because most of the uppers is just all this molding going all the way around it, this kind of rubberized molding. That's heavy. And that's pretty substantial, and it's a little bit harder to break in. So on the original Adidas AE1, the higher version of it, you get such a lockdown here in the ankle collar that your whole rear foot, your high ankle, really everything is kind of working to move the shoe, whereas in this one, it does start to feel a little bit bottom heavy, even though, as we see in the midsole, it's really not. Now, going underneath of all of that, you do get metal reinforced lace eyelets. That's fantastic. But underneath of that, it is definitely not as much material as on the AE1. There's still some decent padding in the forefoot, not too much. It's about half as thick as the original, but there's a lot more ventilation in this one. It's a lot more netting. You look at that thing on the breathability test, these things only heated up 109.8 degrees. That's better than the original AE1 because you can see on the breathability mapping, you could see a lot of fog actually coming out of the sides of these. One thing I noticed though is in the rear foot of these where you do get some decent amount of padding and still actually right now I played in these yesterday for the last time, and there is still moisture retained in this shoe right now, and that is just from all the areas that aren't this little halo vent on the underside of it. So the shoe still holds on to a lot of moisture even with the little bit of an increased ventilation here. Really everything else and just that much substantial rubber backing around the whole thing, it's going to hold on to moisture really no matter what. So honestly, in terms of the heating and moisture retention, I didn't notice too much difference in the lows versus the highs. Not enough, put it this way, to make you want to buy the lows versus the highs just based on moisture and heat retention. Same thing in the rear foot. This is not carbon fiber. This is just plastic. It's just got kind of like a carbon fiber checkerboarding, sticker on the outside of it, but that is just a thicker piece of plastic. Still strong, but it's just not carbon fiber, what it looks like on the outside. Now, in terms of the lockdown on these, really, once you broke them in a little bit, heel slippage was none. It was mild to begin with, but really none after that. So you don't really need the higher collar to stop the heel slippage on these. Like I said, this is the geometry of the ankle, pretty good. Look at this thing on the upper durability test, 10 seconds, highest grit sandpaper. Yeah, I mean, it definitely starts to pound through that rubber. It's just that there's so much of it, doesn't really matter. You can actually see where I dragged the shoe too. There's a lot of scuffing there. And yeah, it looks a little bit weird, but like I said, it's so thick, it's so substantial. Honestly, this is one of the better dragging shoes out there, not necessarily for the, the durability, especially on an indoor hardwood court. Nothing's going to happen to this. This is going to be like an armored tank. But the fact that the taper here in the toes, on the inside of the shoe, it kind of swoops in a little bit more rounded off. So that the shoe just glides, especially on hardwood. The shoe just kind of glides along it pretty easily, which is nice. Then you got the honeycombing, so actually you can get a little bit of traction. It's forgiving because of the shape, and then it's gripping because of the actual material. So that actually is pretty nice, number one, on the lows as well as the highs. Looking at the midsole teardown, the midsole is definitely the most bizarre part of the AE1 lows for, a lot of different reasons. A lot very good. You look at these things, yes, it has the same kind of 3/4 length, almost full length bottom loaded shank that the AE1s have, but it's actually more substantial in the midfoot. It actually goes a little bit longer before it kind of dips in. The AE1's a little bit more molded. This is super thick. I mean, this is a really premium shank. Shank score on this is 0.4. Now, you have light boost in the rear foot, which is a pretty thick slab of it, and then a little bit of a thinner one in the forefoot. Now, there's a carrier foam that these things are set into, and I mean, it feels maybe a little bit similar to the Light Strike on the Dawn Issue 6. Thing is, you look at it on the bounce height test, 37 centimeters in the rear foot, 37 in the forefoot. Now remember, this is light boost. In the originals, in the AE1, it is jet boost. Now, I know I've talked about jet boost in the past in terms of it being in heavier shoes. The AE1 as well as the Harden 8, those are heavy shoes. And jet boost still makes it feel like a very nimble light shoe. It just has so much pop to it. I remember when Adidas didn't put the correct specs on the AE1, and I kept looking for the Light Strike in it because it says Light Strike in the forefoot. And I'm thinking like, what Light Strike is this? This feels amazing. It was bouncing to the moon. So, you know, whereas Jet Boost feels like a trampoline, Boost Foam feels more like a premium mattress, just feels very cushioned. Light Boost feels like Air Max. That's what it felt like underfoot. Not really super cushioned like Boost is, not really bouncy like Jet Boost. And so, you know, you can kind of see it too, you know, that the pores of it or the vacuoles are a little bit bigger. It looks more like packing peanuts underfoot. It's not bad by any means. To me, I would much rather have the Jet Boost in there just because, you know, the lows are still heavy shoes too. And in these ones, like I think it's more the shank that's doing the work in this one. I mean, a fantastic shank setup on this. Not only does it go long, but it's also super thick in the midfoot, you know, to hold you up there. So, yeah, I mean, the midsole feels a little bit lighter. Like the shoe does feel more bottom light on foot, but you're not getting as much back as on something like the AE1 or the Harden 8. So kind of take with that what you will. Once again, to me, I think I'd rather have the AE1s and what the Jet Boost feels like versus these, but can't deny, you know, the dual density foam setup, especially a little bit more, you know, dense foam under it, lighter light boost on top of it. For a lot of people, I think they're going to like that combination of the more, you know, light ETPU foam over top of the more dense cookie dough foam. And getting into the outsole tread, it's very similar to the original AE1. The undulations in it, those macro undulations, don't look as pronounced as on the AE1, but it still does have, you know, just, you know, basically a very, very long delta pattern with, you know, really narrow tread, and then more of a macro undulation, right? I mean, the whole full-length tread pattern just kind of undulates and ripples, so you're getting, you know, the traction of the individual lines, right, of traction, as well as the more macro channels of traction. Like I said, on mine, it does not look as pronounced, but it is still there. Now, look at it on the grip test ramp, still slips at 44 degrees, same as on the original, so, and they are different weights, slip at the same time. And so it's still that same really premium Adidas compounded rubber that, number one, has a very high durometer, but number two, you know, really does give you nice tack on indoor hardwood as well as outdoor quartz. These things gripped fantastic. When you look at it on the viewing box, you can kind of see, you know, the tread kind of moving, you know, all those lines kind of swaying and flowing, which is really kind of nice to see. To me, this is a really nice combination of tread because you get the real, you know, fine traction of the, you know, the narrow lines, those delta lines, but then you also get more of the macro traction with those undulations and ripples within the actual compound of rubber itself. Now look at this thing on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. I mean, not even a millimeter of damage on this. Like I said, the durometer on these, same as on the AE1, very high. Thing is, on an outdoor court, like I said, these lines of tread are very, very narrow, so it's going to start to wear down still on outdoor courts. However, on indoor courts, these really should last the duration. These are definitely more, like I said, armored tank type shoes, especially if you're playing on indoor hardwood, rubberized, like a sport court surface. And taking a look at the speed ratio, they come in at a 2.07. Shank score of 0.4, very well earned, brings them up to a 2.47. I think that's kind of where they belong. The thing that I didn't like about them in terms of speed is, number one, they still feel bottom heavy with all the molding around them. But the fact that, like I said, you're just jamming into the front of these shoes, it's just uncomfortable to stop. They do come to a stop okay. You're not molded and indented lateral flange. I mean, it's enough. These still aren't the most laterally stable shoes. Let's not get that confused. But like I said, it's enough to come to a stop and you not feel like you're gonna roll over. They definitely don't feel like the Dawn issue 6 where they feel super just stable and really kind of flat to the ground. You can really kind of get a nice pivoting power on these. To me, these are definitely more up and down shoes. It's just that when you're trying to bend them and move them, like I said, the uppers just don't break in very well, and the ankle collar on these and the tongue just isn't enough to hold your foot in position. So while you're kind of getting up to your higher speeds, you're putting a lot of force into the shoe. Like I said, I was just sliding everywhere, and I was really kind of getting a lot of irritation where the rubber met the textile, kind of in the forefoot, kind of all the way from really just, distal to the last lace eyelet, all the way kind of into the forefoot of the shoe. And that's really where I kind of see these things as being kind of not ideal for speed, because although, yeah, they can, they have a nice diving board effect to them. It's just all the kind of discomfort. It really, takes your mind away from what you're doing, just kind of paying attention to that. And getting into the fit of the AE1 lows, really similar to the AE1s. The end flare on these is 10 degrees. It's nothing crazy. But if you look at the toe box taper, it's 33 degrees, which is a pretty aggressive taper in the toe box. It kind of needs it because, it's like I said, it's just a bulky shoe. They're a little bit shorter than the AE1, but the AE1 was also a bit longer of a shoe, so this is kind of bringing it back to more true. And then the metatarsal width and the toe box width at 9.4 and 10.4 respectively centimeters, really generous. Like I said, there's really no break-in in terms of width on these things. It's just they feel so short on your foot because you're just sliding into them so much. I would say, narrow medium foot and go true to size, a 2E and go true to size, a 4E would probably go up 1/2 size on these things. The thing is, like I said, you got to put something under the tongue to stop you from sliding in, but even putting something under the tongue, I'm not so sure how much that really does because the tongue doesn't have much structure to it, so I think you'd still be jamming into it. You really can't do that unless you have a tongue that's a little bit more, stout, more, more gusseted in there, and you can put some thicker felt in there to stop your foot from jamming in. You better be wearing thicker socks with these things while you're using them. So I would say in terms of the snake bitten foot, I still think they're, okay for heel pain. They're okay for, ball of foot pain because, like I said, they're a little more forgiving in that metatarsal area. They don't start tapering really hard until the very distal toe box, which honestly, I didn't really notice until you start jamming into it. So in terms of turf toe, runner's toe, tennis toe, turf toe, and then runner's toe and tennis toe are different things, but it's still bad for all of them. Hallux limitus, things like that, anything where you're getting jamming into the toes, hammer toes, anything like that, these things are a no-go for sure for. I don't have any of those issues, and I was still feeling it. I mean, they lock an orthotic down just fine, so they're okay for orthotics, they're okay for braces, which is great. It's just like I said, to me, the comfort factor of these, it was hard to pay attention to how the light boost felt. Like I said, it felt like Air Max, so it wasn't crazy comfortable, it wasn't like Jet Boost. But like I said, most of the time I was just wondering, like, when I take my socks off, is my toenail going to be a bloody mess? Like, that's basically what I was thinking of when I had these. So, with anything bottom of your foot, they're okay. Getting into the front of your foot, though, like I said, kind of a no-go. And with that being said, getting into the performance, the AE1 lows, what I have noticed since I started doing the basketball lessons and started getting, some drills from my coach is that I can really tell now when a shoe is nimble and easy to move around because I only can do some of these drills under the most perfect circumstances. And I just remember just recently, since I have these here, the Dawn issue 6, I remember doing a lot of those footwork drills. They felt super easy to do. I mean, yeah, I'm still not the best at them, but the shoe wasn't getting in my way. Whereas in these ones, they just felt clunky enough to where I was, like I said, paying attention to these and not necessarily to kind of my footwork and kind of what I was doing. And like I said, they were jamming me enough and that taper was noticeable enough because I remember when I saw the AE1s, I thought, man, this is a pretty hard toe box taper. Am I going to feel that? And I really didn't. It really wasn't bad, but it's when you're sliding into it that you really start to feel it. And so that's really kind of the rub on these. To me, without the bigger ankle collar and the more substance around your ankle that you can kind of, the shoe feels like an extension of your leg. It feels like an extension of your high ankle. The shoe, to me, just feels a little bit clunky underfoot. I know, when I did the original AE1 review, I think I got more hate on this video than just about any other because I just wasn't as impressed with them. And I think, this video will probably rival that one in terms of comments because with these ones, same thing. The parts, the pieces of them, most of them, are great, especially in that midsole and in the setup. And I think that midsole setup in a different shoe is probably fantastic. It's just that how the shoe comes together and with all this molding and how much weight is carried by the bottom half of your foot and kind of how little the ankle collar and how little the tongue help you out. Like I said, the shoe is almost driving your foot instead of your foot driving the shoe. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that don't mind the breaking of these, that can break them in, get a little bit more weight reduction than the AE1, and they're going to like them, right? Because like I said, the profile is pretty much the same as the AE1 in terms of the shape of them and everything. So if you like that shape, you're going to like these. It's just, to me, if I'm going to buy one or the other, I'm still going to get the regular AE1. And like I said, I don't think either of them are bad shoes whatsoever. I'm just not on the AE1 train completely. I would say I just think there's enough in these that give me concern that, like I said, I think there's going to be some complaints about them, going forward, people using them and kind of seeing some of the same things I was. I know I saw that in the comments as kind of, the months rolled on with these. It's just the geometry is what's concerning me. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Think I'm right, think I'm wrong. Like I said, sound off in the comments. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. Also, as a lot of you know, Anthony Edwards, has been wearing these a lot for, the USA Basketball Showcase. We've seen these around the Olympic Games. If you do want to see all of my favorite shoes and all I think were the kind of the coolest shoes across all the sports in this year's Olympic, Paris 2024 Olympic Games, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your ever and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.